Here.
Mrs. Lofton,
Here.
Mr. McGuire,
Here.
Mr. McKinney,
Here.
Dr. Weston,
Here.
Ms. Westfall,
Here.
Mr. Williams,
Here.
Ms. White.
Here. All right, 1.03, 1.04, Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silent reflection.
I pledge allegiance to the
Thank you so much. 1.05, reading of the PVSD mission statement. Mr. Weaver, would you mind?
Thank you, Ms. White. The mission of the Perkiomen Valley School District is to cultivate an inclusive community of learners empowered to grow intellectually, socially, and emotionally.
Excellent. 1.06, approval of our agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Mr. McKinney motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Weston, second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. 1.07, approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 12th, 2026?
So moved.
Mr. McKinney motioned. Is there a second? Second. Mrs. Westfall seconded. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. 1.08 is our special recognition that will take place next week. 1.09, comments on any topic. Board affords the community the opportunity to comment on any topic. For a duration of 3 minutes, please state your name and municipality. I open the floor. Seeing none. Going. We will move on to section 2, reports and presentations. Student liaisons report. Mr. Lees and Mr. Rapp.
Thank you. Good evening. We would first like to congratulate Owen Hamilton and Lindsay Hoffman for their performance in the PMEA District 11 Orchestra Festival. And we'd also like to congratulate the girls wrestling team on their fantastic PAX performance last month, and wish the diving team, girls and boys swim teams, and girls and boys basketball teams good luck in their PAC competitions.
We'd also like to encourage sophomores to apply for the PV Foundation Board. They are seeking a 2-year term for this new position. Tickets are now on sale for the spring musical Something Rotten for $12, with performances March 27th, 28th, and 29th. Students are preparing for the pep rally this Friday through a Spirit Week. There will be no Viking Zone on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. 2.02 is the President's Report. Starting this month until we have appointment, I will use this time block to provide the public, as well as, well, I guess really just the public, an update with regards to our superintendent's search. So that being said, we will plan, with the help of MCIU, to create a community survey. It is due to go out on 2/9. It will stay open until 2/27. That will go out to the entire community as a whole. Broadly, it will be electronic, and you will receive a notification of its availability via Parent Square as well as text. We're working on communication avenues, but you will see that, so keep your eyes peeled for that. The job itself will be posted on February 9th. It will go live on that date, and it will be open until March 6th. We're going to be taking applications for prospective candidates during that time frame. And we will be forming stakeholder groups, focus groups, all focus groups from all levels of staff, students, and administration. And then other pertinence, we will go through potentially 3 rounds, possibly 2 rounds of interviews. First round will be with faculty and staff. The second round will be a task-oriented analysis, and then we will look to have a candidate identified, hopefully, fingers crossed, by May with a July 1st seating. Does anyone around the table have any comments or questions? Okay, so more to come. I'll update you along the way. We're going to be gathering resumes, as I mentioned, between the 9th and the 6th of March, the 9th of February to the 6th of March. And really the most important piece of the information is really the community survey. So please keep your eyes out for that, and please feel free to respond. Okay, that ends my report. Dr. Russell, moving on to you, 2.03.
Thank you, Ms. White. This evening, I have a couple of topics. I, again, emphasize the district's mission, and I want to review the comprehensive planning goals, those overarching goals. They've shifted a little bit with our most recent comprehensive plan. And again, we continue to illustrate these goals in many of our conversations, whether that's with you around the board, our community, with administrators, or with our staff, and then our shared beliefs. So I want to highlight some of the activities that occurred on MLK Day of Service. This is something the district really needs to continue to be proud of. Some updates with North Montco Technical Career Center, and then just some showcasing our students. So this is the team that really does the behind-the-scenes work to organize this day and the activities that our students, our staff, our community members participate in. So kudos to them and thank you to all of them. We have Mr. McKinney right here. He does a lot to contribute to this effort. And there was all kinds of activities that were happening. I tried to capture pictures of all of the different groups. One of the things that I found really pretty neat was that activity on the far right where students were putting together a portrait of Martin Luther King Jr., and they will be displayed in each of our 7 schools. And I did ask the individual who was leading this group if I could have one for district office. I'd love to frame it and put it there permanently. But that was a really neat activity. So our art teachers organized, what were they, maybe 2x2, 3x3 inch square pieces of paper. Students colored based on the pattern that was designated, and then they put them all together, taped them on that board, and it really was a pretty neat project. And then in other cases, you would see them preparing care packages of sorts, or you would see them writing letters. They were engaging in conversation about supporting others less fortunate than themselves and modeling their work after that of Dr. King's. So, really a great day, lots of students participating in different ways. So thank you to all of them that contribute. One of our librarians from one of our elementary schools reading stories to some of our students as they rotated through stations. So let's transition. North Montco Technical Career Center is also experiencing a change in leadership. Their administrative director, her name is Dr. Beth Ann Haas, and some of you around the table are familiar with Dr. Haas. She is retiring this year also. I'm the superintendent of record there, so we are leading an administrative director search, very similar in nature to the search that you are conducting. We're holding focus group conversations and gathering some data, and then we will have interviews prior to leading up to a recommendation to our Joint Operating Committee, the JOC, of which Mr. Williams and Mr. McKinney are a part. They represent the district for Perkiomen Valley. I also want to just let you know, I think I've mentioned it once before, conversations about possible renovations continue at North Montco. They're really trying to think about how they increase capacity of the school. They have a waiting list. It's very popular these days because there are jobs in these areas. And they are really focused on expanding health sciences, which is on the 2nd floor. So they're figuring out how do they move biotech to make more room for health sciences where there is demand on the part of our students and jobs out there. So some really good conversation happening in the interest of our students. They also are looking at some updates to programming in different areas that will lead to sustainable employment for students who are interested. So lots of good work happening there. This is a picture in the bottom right of the administrative team there. Principal, administrative director, and then the assistant director. So just to keep you in the loop, so to speak, on that. These are just some fun pictures. There's been some pretty neat events. Students at Skipback have their artwork displayed at the Blossom Cafe. You may have seen this on Facebook. That's a really nice honor for our elementary students. Then there was a nice inclusion bingo where they gave away lots of baskets. They had a great turnout. Friday, the 23rd of January. This was held by our Viking buddies. And then our students really enjoyed a snow day or two. They loved it. We got lots of great pictures. And this is what you as a board have talked about, the spirit behind those 3 built-in inclement weather days before we would go to a virtual day. And some of the great pictures here, reinforce how nice that is for our students in the community. So despite how cold it was, they were out there. Yep. So what does that mean? This is where we often land with a conversation when we experience these inclement weather days. As of this date, the last student day is June 11th. We have 1 snow day left. If we use that, we will conclude on the 12th. We've used 2 of 3 built-in days at this point. So just an FYI, that's our end date. As of today, the groundhog didn't give us good news, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, thank you. That ends my report.
Dr. Russell, thank you so much. Mr. Suber, Solicitor's Report.
I have no report.
Thank you so much. 2.05, Board and District Committee Reports. This evening, we will discuss finance of the whole. Next week, we will have policy. Oh, it's February, not January. Negotiations are ongoing. Our next meeting is on, what day? The 11th. Here we are. Sorry about that. The 11th, we'll continue on with that. Act 48 will meet on the 11th as well at 3:30. Dr. Russell and Ms. Westphal. That way I combined your names just there. Assessment, nothing on the calendar for that. Education of the whole will meet next week on Thursday, as well as wellness. Wellness will meet at 3:45. We have safety and operations on February 19th. And then we have all of our external committees. Does anyone have anything to offer? Okay. Seeing nothing else, we will move on to Section 3, which is the consent agenda. The consent agenda will continue to be built this evening. Moving on to Section 4, Mr. McKinney, Education.
Dr. Russell, I give it to you.
Thank you. And I am going to hand off to Dr. Nicholson. So thank you, Mr. McKinney.
Thank you, Dr. Russell, Mr. McKinney. Brief agenda for you this evening, Dr. Russell, if you can pull that up. Let me grab that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the clicker. As we move forward, there are 4 items on the agenda for an education update this evening. As a standing item here, enrollment and staffing updates, a resource for AP US History, which was discussed at the Education Committee of the Whole in January. We'll briefly discuss Chromebooks, as well as the PV Arts Beat newsletter, which is new for Perkiomen Valley. So first up, enrollment and staffing. I'm going to take just a few minutes to run through this. Quite a bit of this is a repeat or has been provided to the board and to the public in the past. But wanted to give some updates as of January 30th. At the top, you can see the January 30th staffing. As per typical, the bottom chart here, it's a bit of an eye chart. It's a little bit easier to see in the agenda. Is that staffing rolled forward for the 26-27 school year. What we're looking at is the potential at the elementary level, based on policy 126, that we could potentially operate next year to the 26-27 school year with 3 fewer staff members at the elementary. Again, that's a snapshot as of today, or actually, I guess, as of January 30th. And we've already had some conversations with certain principals and why that may or may not actually be 3 staff members, maybe closer to 2, maybe 1. But there are some things that we need to flesh out yet over the next few months as far as staffing. The next slide is actually comparing that bottom chart, which is now on the top, to the second chart, and you can see in the green on the left are the new revision to Policy 126, which is later in this agenda for first reading this month. So this would look at what those staffing numbers could potentially look like for 26, 27, again, with the revisions to Policy 126, moving those class sizes. And you'll see here it goes from a potential for 3 fewer staff members at the elementary for next year to 2 fewer staff members. So there is a change. I believe if you look, Schwenksville in 5th grade changes from 3 to 4 staff members with that revised policy providing for a bit smaller class sizes at that grade level. Similarly, when we look at secondary, when we look at the middle schools, again, the top chart is as of 1/30, January 30th. The bottom chart, sorry, I think I'm on the right side. Yep. Top chart is as of January 30th. That is showing that the current staffing there. The bottom is projected for 26, 27, so those numbers are rolled over. And what this is showing is the current Policy 126 would provide for the potential to decrease our staff at the middle school level by 1 staff member for 26, 27. As we move on to slide 7, based on the revised Policy 126 that is before the board for first reading, you can see that it is actually a change at this time, I believe it's at East, from 8 to 9 staff members would be needed in 7th grade, thus ending up in equal staffing proposed for the 26-27 school year. So as we move forward here, again, just summarizing where we are, that we could potentially, as of January 30th, deal with 3 fewer teachers for next school year. That changes to 2 based on the updated guidelines in Policy 126. At the secondary level, at the middle schools particularly, it would change the potential staffing from 1 less teacher to equal staffing for the 26-27 school year. And we'll just continue to look through all of this and continue to provide snapshots as we move forward and as Policy 126 continues through the process here. So we recommend continuing the conversation. We will keep that as a standing item, continue to look at where we're at as we roll through the rest of this school year and into next. I've included a few snapshots here, which are repeats of things we've seen in the past, our enrollment over time. Dr. Russell has done a great job the last few months of showing this, our special education enrollment over time, which comes down to our staffing recommendations, which we will just one last time thank the board for approving at the last meeting. So this is something we are moving forward with and posting and getting someone started in that special education supervisor position. We've also provided the athletic data over the course of time. We're still proposing and looking at a staffing recommendation to add a part-time assistant athletic director, primarily to work with the middle schools, but that is our staffing recommendation for the 26-27 school year. Any questions on that before I move forward to the resource for AP US History? Okay, seeing none, I will briefly bring up the resource for AP US History. This again, Education Committee of the Whole was presented. This is a recommended resource that was vetted by a number of our teachers. Our current AP US History resource is at the end of its lifespan. AP does mandate that resources are no older than 10 years old. This will be on display or available for review at the district office beginning tomorrow. It was supposed to arrive today, and I believe the logistics over the snowstorms recently have wreaked a little havoc with delivery, but it should be there tomorrow. If it doesn't arrive tomorrow, we will be borrowing a copy from the high school to put at the district office for review, but this will be there for review for the next month. We anticipate that this will be on the board agenda in March for approval. Moving on to what is on the agenda, item 4.02, Chromebooks. I'll ask Mr. Ganesh to step up and just kind of tag team this one with me.
Good evening, everyone. So every year we provide new Chromebooks to students in grades K, 5, and 9. We typically buy these Chromebooks in July, and this year we've been having conversations with our suppliers, and the current market conditions have prompted us to buy these Chromebooks early, so it's advantageous to the district. July is typically a very peak ordering season for all the school districts. Buying the Chromebooks now will provide us a significant cost savings. and also mean that we can get these devices on time so we can get to our students on time. So that's what we are recommending that we do. And this is not something that new to us. We have purchased Chromebooks earlier in the past several years, and there is no additional cost to the district by doing this. The leasing payment for these Chromebooks will not be due until July 1st, which will be our new budget cycle. So our recommendation is to purchase these Chromebooks early. And we also have about $50,000 remaining from this year's Ready to Learn adequacy funds that we are recommending that we allocate towards the Chromebooks. This way, it'll reduce our next year's leasing budget. Any questions?
Mr. Ganesh,
Yes.
is any of this action prompted by the RAM and drive shortages that are starting to happen?
It's about the chip shortage, yes.
Okay.
So Intel, if you to go in a little detail into what Intel kind of, there's some changes in the manufacturer. So the Intel chip shortage is what is prompting this.
Mr. Ganesh, just wanted to compliment you for being on top of this situation and being proactive about getting the Chromebooks early so to prevent further problems. I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ganesh. This, again, will appear on next week's agenda for action for the purchase of those Chromebooks. And last, but certainly not least, it's my pleasure just to bring attention to the board and to the public of the Arts Beat newsletter. This launched on January 23rd under the direction of Ms. Layla Needon, our coordinator of arts and activities, with the goal of really bringing all of our PV stories in arts and music to life. It's a very comprehensive, if you've seen the first edition, very comprehensive newsletter that is planned to be released on the first and third Thursday of each month. So look out in just a couple of days. The first Thursday of this month is this coming Thursday for the second edition. But it was very comprehensive, a great way to highlight all of the happenings in arts and music across PV. The first issue, just for instance, if you haven't seen it, look it up. It includes the PMEA District 11 Band, Orchestra, and Chorus students, all of the December and January district level concerts and school level concerts, and finally, as was mentioned, the musical productions at both middle schools and the high school were highlighted there. So really looking forward to Thursday and the second edition of the Arts Beat newsletter. And that is the end of that report, unless there are any other questions.
Can you go back to slide 7, where we're looking at, in particular, the class sizes for middle school level? Because I was thinking a lot about our class size policy and how that fits, and just looking a little bit deeper at the numbers that we have at the middle school. I know historically our middle schools have been structured around a team model where you've got, a core your English, your social studies, your science, and your math as your team. And so it breaks nicely into groups of 8. And so can you tell me how that works when we have 7 classes or 9 classes?
I can tell you that. So in 6th grade, we're a little bit different and more flexible. And that's where we can adjust from that tight 4-person team, 1 representative in each academic area, because in 6th grade, the certifications are elementary, and they're certified and qualified to teach every subject. So you may have noticed over the years that sometimes at East there are 2-person teams, there are 3-person teams, or there are 4-person teams. It depends on the number of students and the number of staff we often have on hand and what those class sizes end up being as we consider the different combinations. We also try to think about consistency with our teams and our teachers working together. Now, in 7th and 8th grades, that gets a little trickier because they are secondary level certified individuals and obligated to be certified in their content area. So a 9 really can't happen. It needs to be an 8. And those class sizes need to go up to about 27.
So then what you presented here on the bottom row with the 9 is not something we're going to do.
Right. I need to make an adjustment. That was an error on my part. So that really should be an 8, not a 9. And that was what was presented last month, because you can't structure 7th grade teams. Now, we've had 10 in 7th grade, where for a couple years there, we had 2 4-person teams and then a half team of 2 people, because both individuals were dual certified in 2 different subjects. So that's how we divided out the responsibilities for instruction. 9 really doesn't work. That was reported last month as an 8, and the class sizes were pretty high. 27,
Right, that gets us
28.
to 27, and then we
Right.
wanted to shift the class size policy, which 24 feels better to me than 27.
Yes, agreed.
But then when I was looking over at West, and then I think we had set a target of 22 to 25, and we're down at 18, and then I was thinking, well, how do we have 7 classes for 165 students, but 8 classes for 143 students? And so the math wasn't mathing for me there.
It's almost like the schools are unevenly balanced.
What an observation. However, so, but my
No
question
comment.
is, if you had 10, why don't we do 6?
I'm
Because
sorry.
that would, if we
I-
divided it by, if we divide 140, here,
Oh, I see. If we divide 143 by 6, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is why. This is why. We could do it if we had 2 3-person teams, and stay with me, 1 teacher from each of those teams was dual certified.
okay,
Otherwise, you have to work in 4s. You have to have 4. You need somebody certified in math, science, social studies, and English. So odd numbers don't tend to work. It's less typical, although it happens, that I'm certified in science and math at the secondary level. And I could therefore instruct in both subject areas.
okay, right, because when I do 143 divided by 6, I'm getting 24 students, which then is equitable to what we have at
Correct.
East.
But it's difficult to do with the team structure the way we have it right now. I will share with the board, we are engaging in some conversations about what kind of flexibility we might have with that team structure, particularly if we see a larger number of resignations or retirements this year. So there will be more conversations, but your thinking is in line with some of the thinking we have to put into play
Okay,
when we're figuring it out. Those 18s and 19s are pretty unusual, getting pretty low. Are we being as resourceful as we can be with our resources, with our teachers?
okay. And I'll ask another question when we get to policy 126. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay. 402 is a placeholder, and 403 is the enrollment report, which is included. That includes my section.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Mr. McGuire, Section 5, Business.
I'm going to pass off to Mr. Weaver.
Okay, Mr. McKinney, I'll leave it there for now, but my wife would like it back later on. Okay, so we have a quick update for the general fund budget for 26-27. It is the 3rd presentation, however, we will jump right into it. There are no changes on the revenue side. The governor gives the state budget tomorrow, so we'll know a little bit more about that. Mrs. Hurd and I continue to work on some other areas from a revenue perspective, but we have nothing to show for it at this particular point in time, so there are no changes from last month's presentation. We're still at $136,940,798 overall. So I'll just move forward. We still continue to look at this on a daily and weekly basis, again, within the business office, about following some of those trends and analyses that we need to do. Moving into expenditures, we have a couple of adjustments. And tonight's adjustments are, we are reducing salaries and net benefits for a business office review. Mrs. Hurd and I have gotten into the practice over the past several years of actually looking at multiple different levels of salaries and benefits and you know that we're conservative in nature. So at this particular point in time, we'll move forward with a net removal of $275,000 on the expenditure side. We will continue to look at that, but we have other alternatives, as Dr. Russell mentioned, currently in play as well to help reduce some of those costs moving forward. We also have a reduction for a tech lease because we have Mrs. Hurd and Mr. Ganesh. We track the tech leases, obviously, like you would expect. We have a big tech lease coming off. We are having our last payment for 25-26, and we have some significant dollars coming off for 26-27. Right now, we're removing $50,000. The motion and discussion for next week will be the previously aforementioned Chromebooks that Mr. Ganesh talked about. Once we know where that tech interest rate is, and we'll bring that forward for review, then we might want to go back and revisit, and we might have some further reduction. But for now, again, in our conservative nature, we are reducing by $50,000. Overall, $325,000 reduction. That brings us down to $143,663,752. It is a 4.72% budget year to budget year increase expenditures as of tonight's presentation. Couple of things, again, the highlights, I'll just highlight the red items that we just talked about there. And again, this is a quick look for anybody who has any questions from the community to the school board or for us to track as we continue to move forward with the motions of the budget. Those budget pressure points haven't changed at all. We continue to monitor those as well. So for tonight, when you look at this, we have $136 million in revenues. We have $143 million in expenditures. We have uses of fund balances that we've approved in January. And again, we'll continue to monitor those. That brings us down to what is now a 6.22% increase. If you take into consideration the 3.5% Act 1 tax index that we signed the resolution to go, that further reduces that shortfall number to about 2.4 million. Last month, it was about 2.8. So we're moving a little bit. And this is kind of how our budget, we massage our budget, try to increase revenues where we can, try to reduce expenditures where we can, and look at maybe some fund balance alternatives. So that's currently where we're at as of tonight's presentation. Any questions? Mrs. Lofton.
So quick question about the new construction. If you can remind me, just, for example, we've got dozens of million-dollar houses currently being built in Skippack. When do we see the real estate taxes associated with those houses appear in our budget estimates?
So as they are built, they are included in the assessments that we get on a monthly basis. So at first, the land was brought in at a minimal amount. Then as the houses get built, the assessments get changed by the Montgomery County Assessment Board. They go in and they will adjust those
When?
as people move into those homes.
At the point of sale?
Yes.
At the point of sale?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so some of them are built, some of them are not sold yet. So it will take us some time, especially the price point of those houses, it will take some time. But every year we do look at a 0.5% growth in our overall assessments. We do know that when the economy goes the way that it has, many individuals and corporations will look for tax assessment appeals. And so as we get some that come on board and increase those assessments, we have the tax assessment appeals that bring those down because that's just the nature of the beast. And we do get monthly updates. And Mrs. Lofton, to your point, if we get some sort of an update as far as the millage growth, I will reflect that as we move along.
So you get that on a monthly basis from the county based on closings?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, appreciate that.
Sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes 2 months until those records actually catch up. And again, tomorrow's presentation, the governor will present the budget and we'll be keen to look at that. Moving on to the property tax rebate program. We've had this for 5 years or so now. This is standard issue for us at this point in time. This provides a rebate based upon 30% of what the state-generated rebate figures are. The entire program comes in a nice package for us, and we simply apply it and open it up for our taxpayers to apply. We've had 35 taxpayers apply, and we've paid out about $5,000, a little over $5,000 in property tax rebates as of January 23rd, 2026. That is typical. That is one of our higher numbers. So again, we continue to get that information out there. We work with our tax collectors to make sure that they provide that information to all of our taxpayers that might qualify. Moving on, we have an approval for tax assessment appeal settlement, which is a 5.03. There's the information. And again, this motion would allow the legal team and the business administrator and the business office to work with the property owner to finalize a document that puts this agreement into place. With the backup information over the weekend letters, I think this is a pretty good deal for the school district, considering this particular taxpayer actually won the tax assessment appeal and could have been at a zero. So we're very grateful for that. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Section 5.02.
So just for a point of clarification, Mr. McGuire, so because this month, there's no action taken on anything unless it's a time-sensitive issue. Everything will be, it'll be a motion, and then if there's no issue, it'll go to consent.
Okay. So section 5.02, approval of property tax and rent rebate program resolution. Are there any questions? Seeing none, motion? Move it to consent. Okay. Move to 503. Section 5.03, approval of real estate assessment appeal agreement. Any questions?
That's a placeholder for next week.
Okay.
I promise this will make more sense as you do them more often. Go ahead.
Section 5.04, approval of 2526 bus drivers and aides.
And that's already on consent. It was part of the consent agenda.
So. Can go on. And 5.05, approval of 2526 special education contracts and cost services. This is also on consent. And 5.06, report grants and donations. No grants to report for February.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah.
First section down. All right, Mr. Liggett, payment of bills, section 6.
We'll be doing that next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liggett. Dr. Weston, professional personnel, section 7.
Thank you, Ms. White. Items 7.01 through 7.07 are on consent. Item 7.8, we are requesting action tonight on the approval of a resignation. The recommended action is a motion to approve the resignation as listed, and I so move.
Second.
Dr. Weston motions, Mr. McKinney seconds. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
Item 7.08, approval of memorandum of understanding for PVEA summer pay. This is a request to approve of MOA with PVEA as presented. If there are no comments or questions, this can be put on consent for next week.
Actually, can we hold that for next week, Dr.
Pardon?
Weston? Can we hold that for next week?
Yes. You want to
Wonderful.
hold,
Yes,
hold that
please.
off consent?
Yes, please.
Okay. Very good. Item 7.10, approval of objective performance standards for the assistant superintendent. This is a request to approve the 2025-26 objective performance standards for the assistant superintendent. Are there any comments or questions on this item? If not, we can put this on consent. And then finally, item 7.11, the approval of the waiver of national conference attendance requirement. This is a request to approve Dr. Russell and Dr. Nicholson to forego attendance at a national leadership conference for the 2025-26 school year. Are there any comments or questions on this agenda item? Seeing none, we can add that to consent, and that concludes section 7.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weston. Ms. Lofton, Section 8, support personnel.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Sections 8.01, 2, 3, and 4 are on consent. Are there any questions about any of those motions? Seeing none, we'll move on to 8.05. We have requested action this evening, a request to accept the resignation as listed. Are there any, and I so move. Are there any questions?
I second.
Motion by Mrs. Lofton, second by Mr. Liggett. Any comments or questions?
Any comments or questions?
Seeing none?
Aye.
All in favor? Yep, I'm sorry.
Aye.
I didn't finish the sentence. Against? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mrs. White. And then we get to 8.06. We have a request to approve a memorandum of understanding with PVSD as presented. And is this one that you want to hold off the consent as well? So we'll be holding that. Are there any questions, any additional questions about this? Okay, well then that ends my section. Thank you, Mrs. White.
Mrs. Lofton, thank you so much. Mr. Williams, governance, section 9.
I have a long one here. 9.01 is first reading on policies. The following policies are presented for a first reading. You have to go through all of them, or?
You don't.
Okay.
As presented. Okay, so those are all. That's it.
So I have
Go
a
ahead.
question
Go
about
for it.
126, if you want to pull it up. So just, as I was looking at it again, and then looking at what our projected class sizes are, I appreciate that. I feel that, our intent in some of the revisions that we were making was to reduce our class sizes. Bless you. And in thinking about all of the challenges, I'm in full support of having the smaller class sizes. I would certainly much rather, have the lower level, the lower numbers, lower thresholds as we, are looking to meet all of our students' needs. But the question is then, as we look at what our projections are, we're way off the bottom on some of our projected structures. So, I appreciate Dr. Russell's feedback about how she's planning to address that. It sounds like there could be a question about that 9. Now, and I was looking at some of the policies of surrounding districts. Some of them just have caps as far as the number of students that they have per class, per grade level. Some don't have any numbers of students at all. They just, talk about the principles of what they want to be considered. So, initially as I was looking at this, I was thinking it's going to be more of an issue at the elementary level, because as we're dividing by 3 or 4, you are going to have to hit a wider target than you are if you're dividing by 5 or 6. And we're also well under these targets for several of our elementary level classes, which I think is fantastic if we're able to offer that experience to students. But I don't know if we need to widen our ranges that we're proposing. I don't know if we want to set caps. I don't know if we want to just move away and just go towards principles that we want considered as we're establishing class sizes. You know, if we're not actually binding ourselves to any specific numbers. I'm just, I love moving it to smaller class sizes. That's, you know, what I would like to be able to do for all of our students. I'm just not sure how useful this is to our administration if then they're telling us, well, logistically, feasibly, we can't hit these targets.
If we can't hit these targets. So I guess the way that I was thinking about this, Mrs. Lofton, and having our initial conversations about class sizes, I think the consensus was pretty in line with everyone agreeing that smaller class sizes were beneficial to everyone, not just students, but also teachers, and then therefore faculty and buildings and culture and all of those things. So in my view, if we are mandating or supporting a policy with class sizes that reflect this, but there is a discrepancy in the logistical challenge of that, then that shouldn't prevent us from doing what's right by class sizes. Then we have to solve a problem separately. And so I guess that I would ask for the feedback based on that. How we would solve the problem to achieve what we're looking to achieve with class sizes with the circumstances that we have.
So here's what I'll offer. We have traditionally, for a very long time, looked to Policy 126 and the ranges that are recommended there. However, it has been the max that we have focused upon and not the min. So we have kindergarten classes right now with 15, 16, 17 students. And if we were to structure them in other ways, they might go over 21. But we don't worry as much when we have classes that are lower than the minimum end of the range. If we should start to think about that, then we need to talk more about that. But to date, it's really been the max end of the range that administration has focused on. That's just in practice what we've been doing. So it's an interesting conversation and point that you raise. And I would wonder how the board feels about that. Should we be focusing on both ends of the range? Or really, is it that max? Now, we certainly try to create classes that are fiscally responsible with our resources and appropriate based on the principles that you see in the policy. It's not always a neat science, so there are times when we get those classes that are a little bit below the minimum.
Thank you. Didn't want to interrupt. As a matter of just policy, and policy being essentially a goal, and what it is, it's the constraints that we are going to live by. I think that the ranges that are in here are reasonable. They're not hard and fast because it does say that they're goals, and I think it provides the thing that I would hope the administration would want, which is direction from the board in where we picture class sizes to be. As you said, there's that interesting conundrum that happens occasionally where we could be under on some of these, outside the range and under. And when I think about that, I think that's a situation that we should embrace and feel lucky that we are in that position, because that provides a better opportunity for learning for our children. This being just a guideline that's going to sit here for potentially a few years until it comes back up again for a review cycle, I think this does what we want it to do, which is provide administration with our intent and instruction. And I think it's, although it's a range, I believe it's clear what the intent is. Dr. Russell, being an administrator, would you at least agree with that part of what I'm saying, that it's clear to you what the board's intent is?
Yeah, I mean, I've Yes, I would say yes, unless what I just said a few minutes ago does not align with the board's thinking. And as you were talking, Mr. Liggett, I'm thinking, it's not as if we ignore, so Mrs. Lofton, I don't want the board to think that administration ignores the minimum end of the range. We aim for class sizes that fall within this range. We worry more when classes fall above than we do when classes fall below because of the number of staff that we have and the number of students that may be enrolled. That's really what I meant, and I didn't articulate that as clearly. But yes, I would agree with what you just said.
Dr. Russell, just a general question. The implication of the policy, because I don't see it explicitly stated, is that the assumption of this policy is that larger class sizes equate to worse outcomes, smaller class sizes equate to fiscal responsibility challenges, right? Otherwise, we would have universally small classes if we could afford them, quote unquote.
Could you repeat what you said after the smaller class sizes? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that clearly.
So larger class sizes imply challenging student outcomes, right? That's the implication of a larger class size. A smaller class size implies a question around fiscal responsibility, because otherwise, if we had unlimited resources, we would have universally small class sizes of some designation, right? So that it's a fundamental tension between outcomes and kind of resources. Otherwise, we wouldn't define a range for a class size. Class sizes would be equated to the optimal number of students for whatever teacher, for whatever subject. You could have optimal being 8 in one and an optimal being 40 in another. Really doesn't matter, but that's kind of outside of the tensions of the world in which you're actually operating, right? Because otherwise the policy has no function, right? It's just kind of generic.
So I would add to that we do think about how are we fiscally responsible with the resources we have. These class size ranges also assist us in upholding the principles that we believe pay off best for students. So it is a combination of things. Yes, we need to think about how fiscally responsible we can be with the resources we have available as our principals divide out students into classes. There's also, based on research, a benefit to smaller class sizes, particularly in the younger grades, which is why you'll see those ranges lower than what you would see in the upper grades. So some of it's based upon research, some of it is based upon how we know students today. They're presenting to us a little bit differently, and we want to meet them where they are and provide them the appropriate supports. And certainly, if you think about it logistically, fewer students for a teacher to meet the needs of is certainly easier than more students. But there is there's a threshold, there's a tipping point, if you will, and we try to consider that. And the class size ranges really help us to do that and sort of keep us in check. And there are times when we have classes that go over the max because, as Mr. Liggett said, it's a target. And if there's one student over 25 in a class, do we ask the board for a teacher? Not typically. But if if that number starts to grow, and there are more classes that really grow, so maybe we have 5 or 6 students more than what that range would recommend, we come to the board and we ask for that teacher. That's what we have done in the past.
So the follow-up, I would say, in addition to what Mrs. Lofton said, is that caps are commonly defined because there's no kind of formal consideration for a lower bound to be defined, because lower is just equated to better generally. So a lower bound so I kind of am agreeing with you that I don't understand the rationale for a lower bound definition if there isn't kind of a purpose to it. An upper bound definition is clear, like we've got specific requirements around that. The lower bound doesn't make sense unless you tell me that there are certain classes that under 15 students is suboptimal for some reason. I mean, that could be the case, but I don't know that it is. But otherwise, the lower bound it's nonsensical in the context of the policy.
Thank you. I think there is value in that lower bound, boundary that's there, because not to take your logic to its conclusion about the class size, that would mean that the optimal educational system would be 1-to-1, which it's in certain cases, it may be. But in most cases, between fiscal responsibility and also the social interaction of the children, there's value in them being in a classroom, being with children. I think that's, and being, in a small group. I think that's one of the lessons we learned through COVID, is that social interaction is an important part of the education. And so, like I said, we're not going, unless we were to say that one-on-one is the optimal way of teaching, I think giving the range is just helpful in planning fiscally. I think it's helpful for planning staffing. It's flexible enough the way that it's written so that if that one student that's over the range in one class doesn't commit us to having to hire another person, I think this is useful. It shows our intent to lower the class size, which seems to be the intent of the board, that we want the administration to look at lower class sizes for every grade range here. And so, again, I feel very comfortable in supporting the policy as written.
Can I ask, you mentioned it was research-based, right? It's evidence-based, these ratios. Do you call them ratios or class sizes, I guess? So it's beneficial to have a range, and probably the evidence-based, the information, the research shows that it's a range. Is that what you're saying? There is a
Yeah.
minimum and there is a maximum for each grade.
They're not hard and fast, but there is evidence in the research that indicates lower class sizes can be beneficial to student outcomes, to improving student outcomes. Now, I've shared this before with the board. There are times when research will indicate you need to have a significant difference. So, for example, you need to go down to 15 students to see a significant difference from 22 students. It doesn't happen with just a few students typically. However, at the same time, as an advocate for our teachers, I will say they feel that difference, and they believe that they can serve students better, even with 3 or 4. So Mr. Liggett mentioned some of the characteristics, Mr. McGuire did as well. It's also the physical stature of our students in these spaces, which is something we're looking at too. 4th and 5th graders are growing. They're bigger in the spaces, and sometimes those spaces are the same square footage that 2nd graders are in and 1st graders are in. So we also are now thinking about that a little bit differently and taking it into consideration.
And I will, if I could add, Dr. Russell, because you didn't explicitly say it with regard to the overall impact if it is a marked difference, like you said, between 15 and 22. But I think that something should also be said, especially at the elementary level, for that class size range being, let's say, 18 to 23, K through 5. I know it's broken up K2 and then 3, 5, but 18 to 23. Because of differentiated services and a full inclusion classroom model at the elementary level, I would say there is a portion of the day, I don't want to put a percentage on it, maybe, I don't know, maybe 40% of the day, where there is not every single student in the room at the same time. They either get pulled for this or that, so it makes management, I think, feel much different if you have, 2 or 3 pulling out for either enrichment or remediation for ELA, for example. For math, for example. And then there are times when the full enrollment is in that room. But I think that should be said, that even though those are the class ranges at the elementary level, those students are not physically sitting in chairs in that room for the entire time. And I think that's a different conversation for the secondary level. And if I'm misspeaking on that, I don't know if that's worthwhile to point out.
I would say that's accurate, and in some cases with students who are identified, they're included for parts of the day, but not all aspects of the day. So those numbers do fluctuate, yeah. So that's not something that we typically talk about in as great a detail as some of the other aspects of what we do. But as we're moving through this conversation, I think the minimum end of the range keeps administration in check, and it maintains that target at both ends. We don't always meet the minimum. This year in kindergarten, we haven't in every case. We have classes less than 18 students in kindergarten this year. However, if we had adjusted staffing, we probably would have been over 21, which is why that's the case. So we err on the side of the interest of students and the lower numbers because you have afforded us the opportunity to do that, and it's in the interest of our students. We have the staff. We wouldn't ask you for another staff to do that, but if we have the staff and the ability to accommodate, then we do. It doesn't happen all the time. You can look at the enrollment report and see that, but I do think it keeps us in, it's okay that there's a minimum and a maximum. Like I said before, we worry a little bit more when the class sizes get too high versus too low. That's less of an occurrence for us.
So, Dr. Russell, you talked about students being pulled out for various different enrichment or specialized learning opportunities. We've also talked about that, for example, there are autism support classrooms, there's emotional support classrooms. For that, one of the issues that we were talking about previously is that we currently have 3 autism support classrooms. Let's get back, we're thinking about adding a 4th. Where do those students appear in that grid that shows how many students there are per classroom?
So I'm going to look at Mrs. Nasoy. I believe they are assigned a homeroom teacher. They are assigned a first grade classroom teacher, and they receive services, supports from that special education teacher, that autistic support teacher.
Okay, so they're still
Right?
in a
Is that right?
homeroom and then, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Good
so that's
question.
not an additional set of students.
And that was my point about the fact that
They're
a room
pulled
could
out.
say that there's 23 students in it, but there's a portion of the day
Got
where
it.
maybe they only push in for morning meeting and, it depends on the circumstance and the child's, IEP plan, right?
That's a good question, and it helps bring some clarity to how we design that enrollment report. Those students then participate in special area subjects with their homeroom. That's something that we want all of our students to engage in, right, as it's appropriate based on their needs.
Ms. White, being that this policy is up for first read, it's not a motion that is presented to us tonight, and I'm not hearing anything that's an alternative or an amendment or any real change on that. If it's obviously it's your call here, but I think we should just leave this on first read, and if we have more suggestions, we have a month to still deal with this, because next month it would be up for second read, and if we have something, I think, a little bit more concrete, rather than not that it's not a good goal, thing to talk about, that we want smaller class sizes or right-sized class sizes, but I think considering that we are on first read, between policy committee and tonight's meeting, I think at least I'm in a good place.
I'm in a good place with it as well, but what I'm hearing from Mrs. Lofton is that creating a policy that isn't achievable in practice, that's what I'm hearing.
It's a recommendation.
You're right, and I'm going back and I'm looking at that line right above the chart that says the following recommended class sizes are goals to strive for. And so, we have that language in there. Maybe it was just a rabbit hole that I went down in my head of looking at all the different classrooms and, no, it doesn't fit.
I think that, I don't disagree with what you've said about the way things stand today. In my view, this provides some guidance and direction towards where we can go and what we need to do to go there. And that is a separate conversation, and that's a much bigger deal. But in other words, one thing needs to inform the other, and I felt like this was opening this conversation based on previous conversations. This was a good first step.
Well, I think where I was going in my mind was that maybe a cap would be a policy that we want, or maybe we want to establish a wider range. So instead of saying 22 to 25, it's 20 to 25 is kind of, that's sort of where I was going in my thinking on this. But again, if they're targets, right, and I think Dr. Russell had shared during policy committee, you have to really drop down the class sizes to get the most notable impacts, which is
Right.
probably
Which I
something
think that happens organically. That was my point in saying
Right.
that in actual instruction time, I feel as though the class sizes are still lower in many cases than
Okay.
this policy.
Okay.
Just based on the organic nature of how the instruction is delivered in a differentiated way.
I mean, I can live with this policy as it stands because it is, vague in its wording to an extent, but I also just wonder if we want the policy to actually say what we mean, which is actually that we're okay with the lower range, with a lower class size, if we are okay with the lower class size, and if we want to establish wider ranges, or, I guess, but I think I was getting hung up on the mathematical.
That the math wasn't mathing.
The math
like you
was
said.
not mathing.
Right. Based on the enrollment report and the
Right.
staffing
Yep.
outlook.
Administration can think about that, Mrs. Lofton, and come back to policy committee next week with some ideas or a recommendation for change if we agree. I'd like to talk to our principals about that because they're the ones that really develop the master schedules, assign teachers and students. The other variable, or I guess characteristic of the district that's coming into play is that we're declining in enrollment. And our staff isn't dropping off as quickly as students are dropping off. So you're seeing those softer class sizes in the enrollment report. So if we as a committee and then board want to talk about that more, maybe we can come back with some ideas, to share and then see where we want to go from there on Monday. Okay.
Is everyone amenable to that? Dr. Weston? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to talk about political activity for? I don't. Okay, okay. All right. So then that ends section 9, if no one has anything else to offer. Moves us to section 10, closing items, comments from the audience. The board once again affords the public the opportunity to comment on any topic for a duration of 3 minutes. I open the floor. Seeing none, 1.02, comments from board members. I open the table. All right, seeing none. Notice of video recording disclaimer. 10.04 is adjournment. And section 11, executive session, we had prior to this meeting to